Welcome back. These tough economic times are forcing people to work longer. South Africans over the age of 50 are prolonging careers, launching businesses and reshaping retirement. A Harvard study shows that older entrepreneurs have higher rates of success than young people in exploring business options. To give us more insights on this, we're joined by growth strategist Dori Moreno. She is the founder of Self Journey. Dori, very good morning to you. Thanks for coming in. So Youth Day tomorrow, but we're busy looking at the other end of the spectrum, the over 50s.
The over 50s, indeed. Maybe a bit of a forgotten generation, but nowadays people over 50 are reinventing themselves and are being forced to, in a way, work longer and be relevant for longer, because economically people are not able to retire, they're not able to stop working, generating income. But I think more importantly that we are living longer and we stay healthy and active for longer. And so if you're retiring at 65 and you're expected to live to 85 or 90, that's a long time to be spending doing what? So people 50 years and older are really looking at purpose-driven living, doing things that they enjoy, and starting businesses and being relevant.
I found it quite interesting that much younger in life, retirement was always the goal, 60 to 65, going to retire. Funny as you get older, though, that milestone, if you like, you keep pushing further and further ahead. And I think you do reach the point where you realize there's probably never going to be a day in this economy where you are just hanging up your work boots and you're done. I mean, work and socio-economic activity is going to continue.
Absolutely. And I think that if previous generation, if I look at my parents' generation, it was very much study, university, get a job and stay in that organizational business for as long as you can. If possible, retire there at the age of 65, get the gold watch, get the gold pen, whatever it is, and then, live your years looking after grandchildren, traveling hopefully, or doing. But that has changed. We're living longer. As I say, we're healthier. And in fact, we're also not staying in workplaces for as long as we used to. So that idea of joining an organization and staying there for 30, 40, 50 years until retirement is not relevant anymore. People are moving a hell of a lot more. So the youth of today are going to have 3, 4, 5, 6 different careers in their lifetime. So the whole conversation around working and what we do and careers really has changed. But there's a bit of a lag in terms of adapting from a workplace to that. We're still very much structured based on how things were previously, and we're not adapting fast enough.
How much of this is driven by the economy versus attitudes towards age? I mean, I remember when, I think it was the second Sex and the City movie came out, there was a meme that was doing the rounds on social media comparing the cast of Sex and the City in their early 50s versus the Golden Girls, who at the time, in time, were exactly the same age. But our attitudes of 50, I mean, it really, we used to say that, is it right to say that 50 is the new 40?
I think that 50 is almost a new 30, actually. I know 50-year-olds that are fitter, stronger, healthier, more active, living a more fulfilled life than many 20, 30-year-olds. The other thing that we need to consider is that when you reach your 50s and 60s, you've already done a whole lot of living. So you have a lot of experience. You've probably had your children, you've raised them, they've moved on, you've failed, you've picked yourself up. So you have a lot of experiential knowledge is what I call it. And you want to use that experience for some purpose, for a greater purpose. You realize that now you've done the living in terms of having to do the things, putting the kids through school, etc., etc. Now's the time where you actually have time for yourself to determine what it is that you want to do for you, because it fulfills you. So you have a better view and a better opportunity to be more purpose-driven. And because you have the energy and because you have the health and because you're going to be around for that much longer, well, a lot of people, 50, 55, 60 even, are starting businesses or starting side hustles or being active, because the idea of just sitting around doing nothing just doesn't fit anymore.
Not very appealing anymore,
No,
is it?
not very appealing.
And we're also a much healthier generation than our parents were, by and large. How's that shaping or reshaping retirement or wellness in retirement as a concept?
Well, I think that a lot of people that I speak to that are in their 50s or 60s are fear-driven, and it's also the dialogue and the conversations we've had in the past. So this idea that we have to retire at 65 is what we know. And so we're having to rethink that. And because we are experiencing something different, as you say, people in the 50s now look completely different to people in their 50s 10, 20, 30 years ago. We understand that actually we have a whole lot of living to do and still ahead of us, but we're not quite sure how to go about doing that because the world hasn't adapted around that. And so we're having to reinvent a lot of that dialogue and that talking and kind of pushing and saying, actually, we're relevant and we want to remain relevant. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that we find ourselves in where the world is almost structured in a way to kind of shut you down, but people are kind of saying, actually, I'm awakening. I have a lot to give and I want to do that.
Looking at entrepreneurship in our 50s, is it just that breadth of life experience that makes us better at businesses, or is it more fundamental things like, credit lines are easier to obtain in your 50s, insurers are more likely to treat you a little kinder than someone who's much, much younger? Is it just all of that coming together?
I think on the second point there, actually funding is not as easily available for people starting businesses in their 50s because typically if funders are going to look at longevity, they're going to look at energetically, how much you can put into the business. And so that conversation doesn't favor the 50 plus. Typically they go, well, how long are you going to be around for? How much longer are you going to be active for? How much longer are you going to want to do this for? So I think it is more the former, the first point that you made, that it is the collective knowledge and understanding of what you've been through. You would have worked in an organization, maybe even reached senior executive level. You've got a lot of work and a lot of experience behind you, and it's the learning, the cumulative learning that I think just positions you in a way to be able to ride the storms better, to be more pragmatic, to be more realistic, not to expect things to happen as quickly as maybe the younger generation expect things to happen these days. So I think it's a combination of the cumulative knowledge and understanding and just having lived a life.
It's interesting talking to you today about all this because the conversation the country's been having this past week has been about the role of entrepreneurship in helping solve the problem of youth unemployment. You refer to the 50s plus generation as almost forgotten. At this kind of critical juncture in the country's economic growth, it would seem that this should very much not be a forgotten generation, and that the amount of businesses that this generation can generate is going to be key to solving a lot of the country's problems.
Absolutely. So it's about being inclusive for longer. It's about if we're bringing people into the workplace at the age of 20 after school, after varsity, it's not about ending it at 55, 60, 65. The retirement age has been built to go up to 65 in South Africa. It's about extending that and saying how long can we keep people in business for and being relevant for, because as you say, it's going to create opportunity and growth and employment for more people. So you want to actually be more inclusive rather than actually taking people out when they are probably at their most productive, actually. A 55-year-old has still got 20 good years of productivity. My next door neighbor is 80 years old. He's still involved in the business that he founded, and he will probably continue to be so until, well, I would imagine until he no longer can or he chooses not to. But the point is that he's still relevant and he's still able to play an important role in that business. So the concern is if you push that whole generation aside and say you're no longer relevant and you're no longer able to put into the pot, as it were, then you're actually creating a disservice to the economy and the country. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mind shift for a lot of people, particularly the young, as you say, that milestone of 65. We're seeing in other parts of the world discussions already about raising the retirement age to possibly 70. Do you think in time that's a conversation that South Africa will start to have?
I think Africa is in a different position to other parts of the world. As you know, we have a greater percentage of youth, whereas in Europe they're in a declining growth population. A lot of people have chosen not to have children. China had the one-child regime for a long period of time. So the demographics are definitely different in different parts of the world. And Africa is touted to that by 2050 it will provide skill set and the workforce for the entire world, because we are a young population. And so the conversation here is slightly different in that it is focused more around making sure that there is work available for the youth. But I think that certainly with time, the conversations are shifting in terms of letting people work for longer and be available for organizations, businesses, for that experience, but also because you just cannot afford to stop working, given that you're going to be living for another 20, 30 years. So we have to generate income in one way or another.
You know what they say about youth, Dori? Wasted on the young.
I think it was beauty wasted on the young.
Founder of Self Journey, Dori Moreno, thank you very much indeed.
You're
for coming
welcome.
in
Thank you.
All right. All right, more news after the break here on Newslink this Sunday morning. Stay with us.